Hello and welcome to Steven University. I nearly said Steven Universe. Wow, you can tell already that I am suffering with a headache because my brain is not functioning correctly. This is going to be an interesting one for that reason and that reason alone. This week we are discussing
Didn't we promise to be more awake on this one? I swear we did, or something like that.
No, I think we promised to be more together because we'd done a bunch in a row and we felt burnt out. There has been a gap, but unfortunately, timing-wise, recording this, I've just happened to have acquired a very, very, very obtrusive headache. That means constructing complex thoughts is challenging right now. Anywho,
Thank God a lot of this episode involves watermelons.
Something nice and simple to discuss.
Yeah.
Let's go. So this one is Super Watermelon Island. Welcome to Steven University. Obviously, already sort of covered that. Chris, what was it about?
The first 2.5 minutes are bollocks. Basically, Stephen wakes up as a watermelon, and I, for one, had my head in my hands, feeling pretty miserable about the whole thing. I was like, oh, is this say uncle levels of disappointment here? Luckily, it wasn't. So Stephen wakes up as a watermelon. All the watermelons are inexplicably on a deserted island. Stephen then wakes up, and he's like, the ground moves, and Peridot is like, it's the cluster! And he's like, no, guys, it's the watermelons. They're on the island. And nobody goes, why has Stephen suddenly got the power to dream and transport himself into a watermelon? Which, as far as I'm aware, he's never done.
Not to distract from your intro, because we do have a habit of doing that and make it go long, but to be fair, he's shown
I don't have a habit of doing that. No, you have a habit of doing that I do the intro.
I have a habit of doing that. Not to derail us, though, to be fair, at this point, he's shown so many random new powers that do you think it's at a certain point you just go, all right, I guess you can do that now, little fuck. Stop it, Stephen. Stop showing new abilities.
At a certain point, I'll be like, stop giving him abilities. There's a point where he can do too much.
But do you not think that they're all sort of loosely connected so far? All of the powers he's shown, being able to withdraw a weapon is something any gem can do. So he's been able to do that. He's shown no real propensity for shapeshifting. And he's only been able to fuse, obviously, with Connie. So, all the powers he's had have been Rose-related. Her ability to interact with sort of organic life that's like plant-based is pretty much all that he's got left, that and the bubble. So it's not that many.
And the new ability to, like, dream and transport.
Yeah, but that's to do with the plants, though, isn't it? He created those watermelons. They're all planty. Would you not argue it's related to an existing power?
Yeah, I mean, more than anything, I was just being, grumpy for the sake of entertainment. But yeah, you are correct.
I'll be quiet. Carry on.
No, it's fine. Because it probably wasn't that entertaining. So, but I know that people like it when Grouchy Chris comes out a little bit. So,
Grouchy Chris can be fun. I'm really excited because right now we're only a couple episodes from Say Uncle going out. Like, no one has any idea how angry you got at Say Uncle.
Well,
I can't wait.
What's because fun fact, we're at the beginning of season 3, but we've just put up the end of series 1, which is I just find fascinating and crazy that we're a season ahead. But on that, actually, okay, no, I'm going to continue. I'm going to get grouchier because, okay, fine, Dan. He can have random grab powers. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But my main point was they don't question it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't... As your own argument is he's only got 2 random powers, so you'd think they'd at least acknowledge it. Or at least acknowledge, like, no one even goes... Wait, what watermelons? Like, everyone's just like, the watermelons are on an island, yep. They just accept this information and don't take a moment to go...
No, but the watermelons all walked off into the ocean to go live their lives elsewhere. Presumably, they already know. And interesting fact you may not have noticed, that island is Mask Island, by the way. That's not a random island. That is the island in which Stephen took Connie and Lars.
No, right. No, I didn't know that.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, so presumably they all were there to witness the watermelons initially, and then they watched them all go off into the ocean. So I guess they just all presumed, yeah, they're living on an island somewhere. Makes sense, or a certain amount of sense.
If while Stan was talking, then there was a lot of noise, I apologise. I moved my mic wire and it knocked the whole thing over. So apologies for that.
I might have to go in and edit that because I'm imagining if the mic got knocked over, it made a reek clatter.
Well, no, because it landed on some. Well, I'll be honest, probably a peak too far behind the curtain, Dan, but it landed on some underwear. So, all good.
Listeners, that's the closest you'll ever get to Chris's underwear. Just saying. So
hoping.
all you out there saying that you think Chris is cute, back off. He's an engaged man. He's spoken for.
So Stephen tells
I love
them
that you
this,
did not know what to do with that. You just moved on.
No, because people sat there like, because I bet you, right, we've already got on a bit of a tangent,
Yep.
and I bet the minute I said underwear, like 30 people put their head in their hands and went, oh fucking, we're gonna be another 5 minutes now breaking down Chris's underwear. So I was just thinking of them.
All right. Well, for the people who really don't like the tangents, let's talk about Steven Universe, Chris. For God's sake, stop distracting us.
Some of it was
Dear
about
Lord.
Steven. Some of it was about Steven Universe. But anyway, so they just accept this and they teleport the three main gems, Amethyst, Garnet, and Pearl, go to Mask Island because Steven and Peridot can't go because it's too dangerous. Steven and Peridot have a chat. Peridot's like, why don't you just do it anyway? And he's like, no. And then he's like, oh, I'll go to sleep and do it. So he goes to sleep and he finds them turned into a giant woman having a kick-ass fight with Mascarpone. What's it called again? Malachi. So they fight Mascarpone and it's pretty bitching.
It's cool though because obviously they form Alexandrite, who we haven't really seen in battle yet because Alexandrite's last appearance, to my knowledge, was just showing up in Fusion Cuisine to have a meal with the Maheshwarans, Connie's parents. It's really cool to see Alexandrite fight.
Yeah, we've only ever seen her eat spaghetti. So she... I don't know.
Such a ridiculous sentence, but it's true.
So they have this bitching
best
fight.
Weapon, and we're 70-odd episodes in, and all we've ever seen her do is eat.
But well, as far as I can see, the logic is literally, oh, that's pretty tall. We better get tall as well. Like, fusion as a battle weapon just seems to be, what do we need to be as tall as? It's bizarre. So
this show is fucking insane.
I know. So
no other show could make any of this work. It's worth noting.
No. So they have this great weapon, great battle.
It's a great fight.
But Alexandra is beginning to, or Alexandra, whatever it is, is beginning to lose. So Steven, as Watermelon Dream Steven, decides to get his Steven Watermelons to Wonder Woman beach battle the arse out of it, which they do. So chucking spears and stuff, and this came before Wonder Woman, and I'm just saying, I felt the influence. So they have the battle, and as a result of Watermelon Steven army, they win, and the Mascarpone, what is it again? Malachite breaks up. Malachite breaks
just
up.
People will correct you. I've learned that.
That's, a Malachite.
The amount of people who make fun of you for your initial pronunciations of lapis lazuli are incredible.
I'm cool with that.
My favourite part of that, though, is always just like when people would say in the comments, literally, Dan just said it. How did he, hear it and then immediately pronounce it incorrectly? Because there's a point where you go, lapis lazuli, and I'm like, lapis lazuli. And you're like, yeah, lapis lahunaha. And I'm like, it's like I just said it.
I'm not good with it.
No, you're not. It's fine. Carry on.
So they break up, and then the island begins to break up because the cluster is coming. But the cluster breaks the warp pad. So the gems are like, Steven, you have to wake up and you have to do this yourself. And he's like, what? And during this...
That's a very good impression. What? That's exactly right.
During this, Jasper rolls away as well, gets away. So we have a situation where Jasper has rolled and got away. The gems are stuck on the island with the Watermelon Stevens. The cluster's being destroyed, and Steven's there with Peridot, and they have to do it on their own. It went from the beginning, me thinking, oh, what is this? to the end, me thinking, oh, why wasn't this the series finale? Just so many, just like three great, what the hell's going to happen next cliffhangers. So tense, so awesome. The idea of that being the series finale and making the audience wait, a year or whatever to see what happened. Or not a year, sorry, 3 months or whatever, to see what happened is just stunning. Some great stuff to unpack.
Yeah. So I think log date 7/15/2 was January, and Watermelon Island I think was, I want to say, May. So it wasn't too bad a wait.
It's 5 months, longer than you'd get from
months,
like July to September.
Yeah, you're right. I suppose that's a good point. 3 or 4 months is a while. Yeah, I mean it's a decent wait, and arguably this would have maybe served as a season finale. But I'll be honest with you, I think I've stopped judging this show on anything to do with where the seasons start and end, because I have a feeling they have no control over it. The impression I keep getting is that the scheduling of this show and where the seasons stop and start is just Cartoon Network's just constant inability to actually give them any sort of consistent pattern, and that's it's still a valid criticism, but it's not a criticism you can level at any of the creative team. So it's hard to really. It's a criticism aimed at Cartoon Network, and it shouldn't really affect enjoyment of the show, especially when we're watching in bulk, thankfully. But yeah, I think on the whole, it must have been quite frustrating. I think because as much as we both enjoyed Log Date, I think that this does serve as a better season finale, and the thought of this being the final episode of that bomb, and then leaving somebody 3-4 months would have improved this episode in its airing. And made it a better experience for the viewers. And it's a shame that Cartoon Network missed that and missed those opportunities. Sometimes it feels like they don't really understand the show, and that it's kind of been misplaced on that network, and that they don't really know what to do with it sometimes. And that's a shame. But thankfully, it stands the test of time when watched. The way we're watching it, essentially in sort of bulk, going through without any gaps. It's going to be interesting to see if we ever catch up to the show, which we might, and then have to do the waits.
I mean, what's the season that's going to start, like, next, season 5?
5. I think so.
Yeah, so we're already on 3. So
yeah, it's true. But new episodes do. So for those who obviously we're in. I think these are coming out in January. Are we in January? Is that where we are now?
Yeah, because we've done all our Happy New Year's and stuff.
Oh yeah, that's right. So this is like, where are we? We're like the 9th of January, I reckon, if I'm estimating correctly. So, from our recording perspective, it's the 3rd of November, and they've pretty recently announced that we're going to be having new episodes from the 10th of November. So I'm going to have new Steven Universe for the first time in about 170 days. Yeah, I counted.
But is it one a week, or are they bombing it?
They don't know. They haven't announced. I'm going to assume that means they don't know because they're incompetent. But the worst part is they've announced new episodes November 10th on the Cartoon Network app, meaning that these episodes won't, at least initially, be even on TV, which is, I mean, it's a bit like what Nick did with Korra. But I think what Nickelodeon did with Korra was they just went, you know what, our audience are online people, nerdy people. It's not the kids that watch our actual network. So if we shove another episode of, I don't know, whatever Nickelodeon show these days, reruns of Kenan and Kel, I presume. I don't know. I honestly don't know. If they shove that on and that'll get the ratings that Korra would get in the slot anyway, and just put Korra online and make a boatload of money off the advertising, and it still works as a business model, great. That's what I feel like Nick did. I feel like they just understood their audience and went, you know what, no one will mind Korra not being on TV, because all of the people who like Korra are slightly more adult than the usual demographic we go for, which is fine. Whereas here, this is a show that I think appeals to both audiences. So I think putting it on the app and not announcing a return date for it on television is a bizarre move. But, time will tell.
That seems weird.
This is going to seem like a really potentially stupid debate that I'm coming out with in January, because maybe they're going to release the episode on TV 2 days after. They just haven't announced it yet. But to me, sitting here on the 3rd of November, knowing that date is like a week away, thinking to myself, they don't know what they're doing. if we're a week from that date and all they've said is new episodes, no amount, not like we're going to release 5 or we're going to release 1, no numbers, no specifics, no time frame, no anything. Just we're going to release new episodes on the app on the 10th. No date for a TV release. That screams we don't know what we're doing to me.
Yeah, and the complaint is very much directed towards Cartoon Network.
100%.
Yeah.
But that's the problem with any of the scheduling issues with this show is that what I've just described is exactly the sort of stuff that must have caused issues like this, where Super Watermelon Island feels like potentially it was found. Maybe it wasn't planned as one, maybe it was planned as one. I don't know, but we'll never know because Cartoon Network fucked it around.
It's a bitchin' series opener as well. Like it works as that as well, but it ended, and I was so like what the hell? Wow, that is cool. And to get that is exactly the sensation you want in a series finale. What did you think of the episode?
I'm a big fan of this one. I even like the opening, which I know you didn't like, but I love the idea that the watermelon people have just formed their own little watermelon society where they all just like live and work and make food and grow babies. And then like there's this bit at the beginning where there's like a farmer one that's like farming new watermelon Stevens, and he's like putting them in a little string and then carting them around and giving them to families. Like it's all just extraordinarily adorable. And Mask Island is such a beautiful backdrop as well. And I don't know, it just made me happy seeing them all just sort of living their lives.
Yes, when you watch it knowing what is going on. But I think when you watch it cold, especially after like all the build up to the cluster, when you turn it on, I personally feel, and watch it cold, you're a bit like, what is going on?
Yeah, see, now that's interesting that you had a very different experience to a lot of people who saw this on television, because Cartoon Network kind of screwed up with this one, I think, and if memory serves, they put out a clip from this episode ahead of time to promote it. The clip they chose was a clip of Malachite and Alexandrite fighting. So,
oh really?
So people went into this one knowing we were going to see that fight. In fact, about a minute of that fight, which is a huge chunk of it when you think of it.
For me, I'm watching it going, is the whole episode this? Like, and I've been burnt by Say Uncle in Garnet's universe. Yes. It's possible. Like,
yeah.
So,
look, and you know what? And I'm sure if that had happened, I'd have defended it and you'd have hated it. But thankfully, they found a way to get a bit of both. And I really do like the light sort of tone they bring to such a serious episode. Because an episode with such consequences, having such a silly opening, and even a silly conclusion, they're basically the Ewoks toppling the Empire at the end. They really do bring the fight to Malachite, and it's not a one-sided Malachite just squishes them. It's genuinely, they find really interesting ways to make them feel like they're actually capable of defending themselves. And that's kind of a nice little arc for them in the episode as well.
The way they do that for me is they... And it's weird because it's slightly, once you describe it as an arc, you are a bit like, well, how did they go from afraid and hiding to having all these skills needed? Like, they've clearly done some sort of training.
Well,
it's within them, like Stephen.
Stephen gives them a big speech, doesn't he? He gives them like Stephen as one of them gives them a rousing speech, which is how he called them to action in the first episode they were involved in.
But I'm talking about the skills. You could come in now and be like, Chris, come to battle, and give me the most rousing, yes, I'm going to go fight speech
You'd get
in the
shot
world.
2 feet out the door.
Yeah, I still wouldn't know how to shoot a fucking bow and arrow. Like, that's still an issue. I still wouldn't be... So you're like, even all my family, right? So it's like, okay, guys, get in formation. We'd be like 2 steps ahead, like... My cousin would be like flailing at the back, like, should I be next to you, do you think? Or like, just, I'm sure the speech was great. And it was, I think it's funny that we don't hear that speech.
Yes, because you don't need to. We've heard Stephen give so many of these like speeches now. The idea that he's just like, and you're like, yeah, I know roughly what you're saying. We need, you know what I mean? We need to fight. We need to defend ourselves. We need to be responsible for our own life. Blah blah blah. Yeah, we got it. Move on. Like it's kind of genius.
I think what they do that makes it so visually appealing and what makes it so believable is, and for me a cut above the Ewoks, is groups of them do different things. So she is absolutely at first defeating the ones that are just firing at her on the beach. It's when suddenly she then gets hit by rocks, and suddenly there's ones flying in, and suddenly she's
sheerly outnumbered.
You could take on a swarm of bees potentially, but could you take on like 20 swarms of bees? And then you get hit by the bigger guy behind you, Alec, whatever, the giant woman. While they're, because essentially they don't topple the empire, they distract the empire, and get it to a point where it can then be defeated by giant woman. So.
Yeah. The question, I suppose, that's on everyone's mind, Chris, is: did you find the watermelons as gross this time round?
At first, but I'd got used to them by the end.
Fair enough. Second question, and this is potentially me just being contrarian for the sake of it, but in my opinion,
I don't know what that word means. So
to be contrarian is sort of like to disagree just for the sake of having the debate.
Okay,
but I'm not trying to do that. I'm sort of playing devil's advocate a little bit.
I call that doing a Dan. It's weird how people have different phrases for things.
That was good. Very good. You got him. That Dan. What a dick. Anyway, I actually think that doing the weird watermelon stuff at the beginning, before revealing the episode's true nature, is actually a brilliant piece of sort of like cold open almost. So it's all this just watermelon stuff, and I could totally see somebody who doesn't know what's coming being like, really? This the whole episode? And then one of the watermelons goes to the edge of the water, and there's this epic shot of Malachite rising out of the water. Eyes open, seeing the watermelons. And could you not argue that's just good storytelling to like build it that way? That's such a bold opening.
I suppose it depends on your opinion, because I was relieved. I was like, oh, thank fuck for that. It is a dream. But if you were enjoying or relatively intrigued about the watermelon stuff, I can see how you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it works, and it's also a bit because there's because the battle is so long and feels so epic. There's kind of really only 4 beats to the episode: dream, you need to go to Mask Island, the battle, the ending. So breaking it up with making those beats feel so contrasting and so like, oh, it's here, makes it feel a bit more, I think helps with that, basically.
Okay. Interesting.
What are your other notes,
The
Dan?
one thing people always debate about, I didn't get too many notes for this one, but one of the things people always debate, and I think it's interesting, is whether it's an animation error, as Jasper's body, I say body because Jasper's unconscious at the end, because both Lapis and Jasper are separated by Alexandrite, and their bodies fall to the ground. They're both unconscious. As the earthquake splits the ground, it tilts, and Jasper slides into a gorge that's been created by the earthquake. And while Jasper is sliding, her fist moves in a way that could be interpreted as either a animation glitch or her regaining consciousness and clenching her fist just before she topples over. And it's been much debated whether that's her waking up or if she woke up much later. I suppose it doesn't make too much difference, but it's an interesting thought that she woke up and then immediately fell. That must have been deeply unpleasant.
I love that touch of her moving away, because when they land, I was like, tie something around them, like capture them somehow. And then the idea of her escaping and being free, but Jasper being with them, like, it's so well done. It's so, because I suspect next week we're getting just Steven and Peridot. But I want to know about the island as well. And like, to be in a position where I care about both stories is awesome. I also want to add that I really noticed and it's something that is effective always on this show, but I really noticed it in this episode, the music, the way that the music is used. So there's this amazing bit where like it's this epic music and this epic battle, and she's winning, and the more the bad guy wins, the more it's kind of ramped up. And then when the watermelons come in, it's not bum ba bum, yeah, we're here. It's like the music is subtly playing it like it's a joke, and is like, boom, 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 they're here, and like she's crushing them, and like it's like they're nothing. Like when they start battling her, and then slowly that music cue changes as it builds to her defeat, and I just thought that was so subtle and clever, and such an interesting decision with the soundtrack not to go. And I can't remember what happens when they first appear, and maybe when they first appear, it's slightly like, oh, they're here, and slightly rousing. But when they start battling, it is more subtle and more played, almost like a joke with the music, and then just changed gradually. And like it often we compliment the songs and the music in that sense. But I think the incidental, I think I'm using that term correctly, the incidental music should also be praised a lot.
Yeah, often written by the same team, but they do a stunning job with sort of creating music to capture the tone. I mean, the sort of sounds of this show are so distinct that if I hear any piece of music from Steven Universe, I could even if to be honest, even if someone went into the future from a future episode and took a piece of music that I haven't heard yet, brought it back in time so I hadn't seen it, and played the song and said, "What's that from?" and I'd be like, "Steven Universe." It's got such a distinct style that no other show has. It's like partly it's a little bit video gamey. It's usually very sort of ethereal. It's usually quite happy even when it's being dramatic. It's always got a sense of hope to it, which is, I think, why fights like this are so cool, because they've never gone so far as to make us feel hopeless with the music, and I think that's really important. And it gives the show a really interesting tone, because it'd be so easy to make everything seem dark and gloomy. They're in a pretty dire situation. The Earth is arguably on the brink of blowing up, but we're still going to spend some time with some watermelons, fighting a giant woman. So swings and roundabouts, Chris. I also wanted to point out, just because I thought this was so cool, that Alexandrite used all three of the other fusion's weapons. She used Opal's bow, Sugalite's sort of flail thing, the sort of gloves, the sort of gauntlets on the end of the end of Amethyst's whip, and Sardonyx's hammer. Just really cool to see.
I love the way the bow. Sorry, I cut you off completely there.
No, I lost track of what I was saying anyway, so you carry on.
Okay, cool. I love the final. What's the final weapon that cuts them in half?
It's the bow, I believe. It's Opal's bow.
What I loved about the bow was the bow felt very Pearl, but it had this, because it shape-shifted as it went through the air. It felt like it was Pearl, but being controlled by Amethyst. Mm-hmm. The cleverness of them making you see all of them is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's kind of been... Obviously, they borrowed that from Opal's first appearance, because Opal, if you remember... I don't know if you do remember, it's a long time ago now. Back in, I think, probably February we watched it. But in Giant Woman, Steven and Opal are escaping, and there's all these bird creatures chasing after them. And that's when Opal turns around, and this music note hits, and that's when she first forms the bow and fires it, and it's the same effect, basically. And you're right, the design it's designed to be part Pearl, part Amethyst, which is exactly right, because the Opal is that exact fusion. What I loved here was not only did they recreate that, but they threw a little garnet in there, and they used the same music sting from Giant Woman for that moment, which is just so clever to echo the music of the first time we saw Opal use that bow. And once again, hints to Opal with no real Opal. I miss Opal. I like Opal. We had quite a lot of Sugalite and a fair bit of Sardonyx, but we haven't really
missing Opal.
Miss Opal.
In terms of me not recognizing it, you know what? I just think I care more now, Dan. Basically, because obviously I didn't notice that last time that it does that subtly and stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, no, you wouldn't have. You. I mean, again, even when we were talking about it, probably I didn't even probably bring it up. But that is a big part of it, and But we did talk about that weapon and how cool that weapon was, because obviously that weapon is literally Pearl's sort of sword, staff, spear thing, with Amethyst whip for the bowstring. It's a clever idea to get the weapons merged that way. So we did compliment the show on that, to be fair, on that the weapon was a bit of both of them. So we were in the vicinity. We didn't notice the design aesthetic of it necessarily, but we did notice the practicality of it. So, yeah. Anything else, or is that it? I can't remember. Chris.
I think it's it.
Oh, yeah, the statue in the Watermelon Village is obviously based on Baby Melon, who was the melon who sacrificed himself. I
thought that was cool.
even though, like... that episode was so incredibly violent, and the baby. I just love that joke that Baby Melon was what. Then again, didn't we? Go on.
I didn't really get the dog. Like it would have. I've expected more, maybe like a melon version of Lion or something. But
yeah, just a melon dog. Why not?
I suppose it's just they don't have a dog in real life. That's all. But that doesn't mean the melons can't. Who am I to say what the melons can and can't do, Dan?
Yeah, well, the melons, they're having their own little society now, aren't they? They're off doing their own thing.
It's true.
They don't need to do things the way that Stephen did them. They can have a dog or a little,
they don't need to adhere to those rules.
Little melon cat. You know, I'd pay to see that. Even worse, Chris, melon cat fingers.
Ruined it.
I can't. Like, what do you think's worse now? Like, cat fingers as an episode, or the fact that running gag just has not died 70-odd episodes later. 79 episodes later.
That's because it's not a gag for me. It's genuine.
Genuine pain.
Yeah, you can do the outro on your own now, Dan. I'm done.
Cool. Okay. So that's been everything for this week. I've been Dan Doolan, and Chris isn't talking to me anymore. We'll speak to you next week as we discuss Gem Drill.
We might speak. Who knows? I might still be pissed off.
I'll speak to you next week as I solo discuss Gem Drill. Hello, Dan here, and I'm joined, of course, by...
Chris! I didn't know what you were going to do.
No, I didn't know what I was going to do either. I like the idea that you're going to become the Matt Damon now. You're like, Matt Damon. Chris! I thought this was really good. Chris! Anyway, this sort of nonsense, this sort of witty banter, if you're enjoying this, guess what? Now you can give us money.
It's true. You can.
We have a Patreon page. A Patreon page that I am going to pledge right now. Bold, Chris. You ready for this? I'm going to pledge, and if I have to make it just myself, that's fine. But next year, for 2018, there will be one piece of original content on the Patreon page per month.
Boom. Per month. Oh, I thought you were just meaning for the whole year, and I was thinking that was ambitious. Per month.
It might only be a 5-minute thing. It might, I'm not saying that anything will be substantial.
Get better at it,
but I look, enough people are doing it that I feel we owe them that. So from 2018 on, there's going to be a January piece of content, February onwards, through all the months. So join us now, support now, get on the train before it blows up. You want to be an early adopter of these things, don't you? That's what they say.
Yeah, you want to be able to tell your friends, I was a patron of Nothing But Static early, and your friends will go, what's Nothing But Static?
I was on the ground floor of that success story. But, feel free. It's one of those things where we don't mind if you don't, but it's nice if you do, because it helps us cover the server bills. And that's pretty much it.
It's a massive help. If there is an amount you would have paid to have this, or if there is, an amount you wouldn't notice going missing, it would be amazing, and we would be so grateful. And there will be stuff going on it. As Dan said, it's not 100% clear what it is yet, but you will be getting some exclusives, and you will genuinely be helping us. It makes a huge difference.
At the moment, we operate at a loss. It'd be nice to operate evenly. We don't want to make money off the podcast, but we'd like to not be losing money doing it.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's everything. So I don't know if I'm putting this at the end or the beginning of a podcast, but either I hope you enjoyed the podcast you just heard, or enjoy the podcast.
I think put it at the beginning, because otherwise, would they pledge after listening to that shit? Sorry, and thank you.